Rewatch Podcast presents the Wilder and Pryor Rewatch.
I still can't believe it.
In addition to discussing the 4 films featuring comedy greats Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, we will be discussing 2 extra standalone films.
Come and get it, cowboy.
Richard Pryor in Brewster's Millions.
I'm gonna be a little crazy for a while, but I'm not crazy. People gonna think I'm crazy. You stick with me, you're my buddy.
And Gene Wilder in The Woman in Red.
You tell my superiors at the office, who can give me raises and promotions, that if they don't like my answer, they can go take it and shove it up their ass.
Send your feedback to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Like our Facebook page, facebook.com/rewatchpodcast, and follow us on Twitter @rewatchpod.
Double the workman's salary. I mean, they look exhausted.
Today we're discussing The Woman in Red, starring Gene Wilder, Charles Grodin, Joseph Bologna, Judith Ivey, Michael Huddleston, Kelly LeBrock, and Gilda Radner, directed by Gene Wilder. Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast. I'm Corey, and should we break the ice here or in bed?
And I'm Nathan, and what was I thinking? I have kids, a wife, and a good marriage, and to think I could have wrecked it. And for what?
Piece of ass.
Anyway, we're here to discuss The Woman in Red, the last discussion in our Wilder and Pryor rewatch.
Not how I remembered it.
I'll be truthful, not even slightly how I remember it. Let's get into the trailer.
Let's do it.
A woman like this walks into a man's life only once. About 7 years after he gets married, and just before he loses his mind. With a woman at home and a woman at the office, how's he ever gonna get the woman in red into bed?
What, honey? What's the matter?
Oh, nothing. What am I supposed to say to her?
You say to her, hello, angel face, you want to see my goods?
Love is a breeze in Gene Wilder's The Woman in Red.
Come and get it, cowboy.
All right, welcome back. Let's get into some trivia for The Woman in Red. The film was released on August 15th in 1984, and it had a total box office of $25 million. I couldn't find any information about a production budget on this one, but I'm willing to put money on the fact that it doesn't look like an expensive film. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I don't think it would have cost too much, and $25 million is a pretty decent return, so yeah, it's hard to say. Not a hell of a lot of information about this, just like back when we were talking about Another You. Just not much going on the internet in regards to this one.
As we said, it opened on August 15th, and on that weekend it opened up against Tightrope, Sheena, and a film called Dreamskate. In the box office at the time, there was Revenge of the Nerds, The Karate Kid, Purple Rain was in there, Ghostbusters, Red Dawn, and Woman in Red debuted in the number 7 position with a $3 million haul. And it did pretty well against this, and it actually sustained its box office for the next couple of weeks as well. It went up to 6 million, so number 6 in the second week. There was other films like Gremlins was in there too. Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Doom was in its 14th week of release. Gremlins was in its 12th week of release, and we're absolutely killing it. Like, just to put it into comparison, Gremlins at the time had earned $132 million, and Indiana Jones did $164 million by its 14th week. So those films are absolutely killing it. And as we said before, like, the list of films against it, there was quite considerable.
Yeah, I mean, this one's not setting the world on fire or anything. It's not huge in comparison to some of those big films that were out at the time that it was up against. But yeah, I think mostly this film would be remembered for the theme song, I would venture to say. I Just Called to Say I Love You, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah. Well, Stevie Wonder did a fairly memorable soundtrack. I got to admit, like when I was watching the film the other day, I had forgotten how good the soundtrack was and how much of a good effort Stevie Wonder kind of put into this. And he clearly took it very seriously, didn't he? Even though like the film is kind of fun, but it's kind of like a screwball farce comedy. The music is actually quite good. And I mean, I just caught us To Say I Love You was a huge, ginormous hit, like an enormous hit, yeah?
And, you know, for the most part, the soundtrack composed by Wonder, also featuring performances by Dionne Warwick. As far as the music goes, I mean, you can't go too far past this. I mean, they got some big names in there. You know, so, of course, we're doing this whole thing because of the collaborations between Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. But this film is actually the second of 3 collaborations between Gene and his wife, Gilda Radner. Before this, they made Hanky Panky, and then after this, they made Haunted Honeymoon. And it was actually, I think, between this film and Haunted Honeymoon that they got married in France.
Yeah, that's exactly. And whilst I was kind of watching this film, I can't lie, I was actually struggling because I knew exactly who she was. But I'll be truthful, she's not an actress that I really know a hell of a lot about. Like I've know the name, I've seen a few films here and there, but I wouldn't call myself an expert. But I was struggling to see Gilda Radner and Gene Wilder as like a couple, if you know what I mean, like especially in this film here because she plays like a secretary of some description. She's a fairly peculiar kind of character, isn't she?
Yeah, she's like the female Gene Wilder, right? It's almost a bit weird. You know, of course, the lead actress in this film is Kelly LeBrock, and this is actually her breakout role. You know, this was before Weird Science.
Weird Science was the next year in 1985, and I think it's fair to say that's probably her most probably this and Weird Science, definitely. Do you know something I kind of read that was a bit interesting about Kelly LeBrock is, did you know she was actually married to Steven Seagal?
I did not know that.
For 9 years, between 1987 and 1996, she actually appears in Hard to Kill. So, yeah, a little bit of information. She was also, it looks like she was married to the producer of The Woman in Red, a guy named Victor Dry, who, I don't know if you saw his name over the opening credits, but he was the producer of this film. And it looks like she was married to him for like a small period. Yeah, she's currently married to someone named Fred Steck, apparently. So there you go. But yeah. Steven Seagal, man, I just can't see that. Yeah.
That is crazy, yeah. And I guess we should mention that she is a model at this point. And
of course she is.
This is her breakout role to go from modeling into acting.
Now, apparently Melanie Griffiths actually turned down the role of Charlotte in order to play the character of Holly in a film called Body Double in 1984, a film that I have not seen. Maybe you have.
Not familiar with that one.
Gene Wilder actually wears a fair few hats in this film. Like, he's not only the star of it, but he is also the director. This is not his first film directing. He did The World's Greatest Lover in 1977, and he also directed The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes's Smarter Brother, which I believe, didn't you cover that on another one of your podcasts?
No, we did Without a Clue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. There's a different Sherlock comedy.
Oh, okay. I think he directed 4 or 5 films in total, with his last one being Haunted Honeymoon in 1986. So I'm not too sure what quite happened to Gene Wilder, like in terms of his confidence in directing and acting, because I kind of got the impression he's not a slouch. He certainly knew what he was doing. I'm not too sure why he didn't pursue it maybe slightly more aggressively. Perhaps he just didn't enjoy it. I suppose it's possible that he just didn't really enjoy it. Maybe he was just over show business. Like, his last film was directing was Haunted Honeymoon in 1986, and as an actor, I think his last big screen appearance was the film that we covered a couple of weeks ago, Another You. So I'm not too sure why he decided to just disappear from the acting world like he did, because as we said earlier on, he certainly had more to offer, and for whatever reason he just didn't believe in himself, which is interesting, but that's okay.
And like I said, I mean, this film's not setting the world on fire or anything, but what it did do is start a bit of a craze of remaking foreign films for the American market, remaking them in Hollywood. And if you didn't pick it by the themes of this movie, this is a remake of a French film which was called Pardon mon affaire from 1976.
There was actually a follow-up to Pardon mon affaire, which was actually made in 1977 in France. So I'm surprised they didn't do a sequel. They probably could have. and I think there was probably enough interest for it, but they just, for whatever reason, chose to kind of move on to different things. I think there's actually a little Easter egg in this film somewhere too, where I think there is like a photograph of someone being in the film itself, which is actually the director of the original French film.
The photo of Charlotte's husband. She pulls it out of the drawer, and he's supposed to be a pilot or something.
Yeah.
That's the director of Pas de mon affaire.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't too sure which one it actually was, but yeah, I thought there was a bit of a nice little Easter egg there.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, there's another big scene or shot that was borrowed for this film, and it's the Marilyn Monroe dress flying above her head in the street grates, which of course is a very famous image of Marilyn Monroe from the 7-Year Itch. They swapped it out, instead of white dress, it's a red dress because she's the woman in red in this, and they recreate that, and so he's definitely going for homages throughout this film.
Big time, and we'll get to it, but that scene's quite funny.
Predominantly used as marketing material in the poster. I've always been a big fan of old movie posters, and if you see some old movie posters, they actually do kind of like a plot summary on them, and the one for this one actually reads, "Shy, quiet Teddy Pierce wanted a little adventure, and one day it walked into his life in a red silk dress. Now his wife is packing a gun, his friends are going nuts trying to cover for him, and he's about to get caught with his pants down on the 6 o'clock news. Be very careful what you want, because you just might get it." Nice. I just love those little touches on those old movie posters.
Yeah, why go and see the movie, man? You just read it right there. Give or take. In saying that, though, after reading that, it's not entirely accurate. Now his wife is packing a gun.
I know. That's like the smallest of plot points that really has nothing to do with his affair.
Like, nothing to do. Anyway, we'll get into it.
Yeah, so we may as well get into the film discussion, yeah?
Cool.
Okay, so The Woman in Red. Now, of course, like we mentioned, this song opens with that wonderful Stevie Wonder song, which is great. Establishes that we are in San Francisco.
Yeah, very scenic too, isn't it?
Yes, I love the look of San Francisco. Such a beautiful looking city.
You know what? Whenever I see San Francisco, I always think of the show Full House.
Yes, it's true. There's a lot of like buildings and stuff they go to in this movie that really just makes you think of Full House.
I know that's a terrible kind of comparison, but it's not a show that I love by any means, but it's a show I certainly remember and was a part of my kind of youth, if you know what I mean.
But we pretty much get straight into it. We kind of start at the end, this old sort of structure of,
yes,
he's up on a window ledge and he's like, how did I get here? Before I had this wife and never looked at another woman, and I always just did my job. I'm such a nice guy. And then we sort of flash back to show us how did he end up on this window ledge.
Yeah, and the film does not stuff around like at all. Like before we meet any kind of peripheral characters, we pretty much flash back to Teddy. Like isn't he in like some kind of car park at his work or something like that? And we don't muck around with our introduction to the woman in red. And I mean, Teddy's just kind of sitting there. He's about to get out, kind of about to go to work. Kelly LeBrock, you see her shadow kind of in the distance. She walks across camera and she goes across like a grate, like as you said, like the Marilyn Monroe, 7-Year Itch scene where she goes across the grate and the wind kind of blows up her skirt and you have that really like amazing moment. Well, Kelly LeBrock takes it to the next level.
It's so good because she steps over it and it blows her dress up and she's like, oh. And Gene Wilder notices this and he thinks, okay, she's just walking away, but he looks up and she's actually walked back and she does a bit of a dance on it because she actually really likes that all this air is blowing her dress off, and she has a dance for like a minute and a half to, again, Stevie Wonder's Woman in Red, Woman in Red, Woman in Red. And it just goes on for like a minute. It's just so exploitative of Kelly LeBrock's body. Yeah, it is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous, and like they really do show it off, and it's very funny. It's also kind of terribly bad at the same time, but you just accept it, don't you? I mean, that's the whole film, isn't it? It's the woman in red. I mean, the very basic concept of this film is Teddy Pierce is a very happily married man, leads a very boring kind of life in existence, and he sees this moment with Kelly LeBrock, and he essentially becomes slightly kind of obsessed and decides that it might be interesting to step outside his comfort zone. Is that a fair comment?
I think so. He kind of like races to the elevator and makes sure he gets in there with her. And they kind of have this moment where the power goes out and they kind of fumble around, and he kind of thinks maybe there's something here, something could happen between the two of them.
You almost kind of get the impression maybe something does happen during that period, because once again, we kind of come back to creepy Gene Wilder, because there's as much as there's been this kind of ongoing theme in the film series that we've kind of got to of him being like wrongly accused, there's also been a bit of an ongoing theme of him being like a slightly kind of ladies' man.
Yeah.
Like we've mentioned this before, but it's just this ongoing kind of theme. And this film shows it off to 11. Like he really does. He's infatuated with Kelly LeBrock. He really kind of wants to get to know this woman, and he's fairly aggressive in his manner to kind of get there, isn't he?
I get it's like immediately, because he's in his office. He's an ad man. He works in advertising business. And yeah, he's just like a regular dude. He's got a wife at home and he's sort of mid-ranged ad executive or something like that. He looks over and she's like sitting at somebody's desk waiting for somebody. And he just calls the phone on the desk to ask her out right there and then.
Expecting her to kind of answer immediately. Like, isn't he like peering through his newspaper or something like that too?
He's got like an article cut out so we can look through it or something. But the thing is that I think they pull down like a screen or something between his office and the desk so he can't see her anymore. And in walks Gilda Radner and she answers the phone. So he thinks he's talking to the woman in red, but he's flirting with Gilda Radner, the secretary character.
Who is totally perplexed why Gene Wilder, he's keep in mind his character's name is Teddy Pierce.
Pierce.
So he's Gilda Radner is totally perplexed by why Teddy is calling her, and he's being really forward.
Yeah.
And he's sort of saying like, I'd really like to take you out. How about dinner tonight at, he says like 9 o'clock or something like that. And she says, I can't do 9, I can do 10 past 9.
I think this is the best Gilda Radner is in this movie, because she's so perplexed to why he's called her up to ask her out. And then, they set the time and everything. And immediately she's like, the adrenaline's rushing through her and she's shaking and she tries to light a cigarette and she lights the wrong end and she's so out of it. She cannot believe that this guy has asked her out.
Prior to this, Gene Wilder, he's got like some kind of assistant. I'm not too sure what his character name in the movie is, but he's on the phone and it sounds like he's making like an inappropriate phone call.
That's right, yes. It turns out he's talking to his brother about something.
Yeah. He's talking to his brother about something random, and it sounds like he's like propositioning his wife or his girlfriend like on the phone.
So it's just so random.
It's so
we say that a lot about these films with especially the ones with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. So random.
It is so random. It really is. And he gets really cranky with this guy and he says, why can't you keep that filthy talk away from the office? Why can't that wait till you get home? But it was something totally different to what Wilder was thinking. But it's actually quite a funny little scene.
Yeah, and this is pretty much where we start getting into the many, many problems that Teddy is going to encounter across this film. He gets in the car, his wife picks him up from work, his wife's name is Dee Dee, and he tries to play stupid about the fact that it's Wednesday, he thinks it's Thursday, and he was going to go to a movie, but it's his wife's book club. He's like trying to make it seem like happenstance is going to pull him away from home that night so he can go on this date.
He keeps talking about doesn't he talk about how if the office asks him to work, and he keeps complaining about his boss and the unreasonable expectations that they're laying on him at work and how upset he is about everything, and he's really laying it on thick.
Really laying it on thick. And she drops him off at tennis. He's going to play tennis with his friends.
That's right.
And you quickly learn that at least two of his friends are also having affairs.
Yes.
Like, everybody in this movie, like, he's got three friends that he hangs out with, and two of them are also having affairs.
Yeah, I mean, you learn, I think his name's Joe, played by Joseph Bologna, and his other friend, the great Charles Grodin, who, might I add, is kind of excellent in this film.
He really is.
I thought he really kind of adds like a sense of gravity to the scenes and that he's kind of involved in. In fact, I kind of wish he was used a little bit more throughout the story, but, you know, that's just me.
What about Teresa?
What about Teresa?
Well, doesn't she notice anything when you go with someone for a while? Like you used to go with that girl before? Doesn't she think anything's up when you do that?
Look, Teresa's got the kids to worry about all day. She's too busy to notice anything. And they're great kids. Hey, look, she's 38 years old. She's a very happily married woman. You see, she smiles all the time.
Does she do it?
Does she do what?
What do you mean, does she do what?
What do you mean, does she do what?
What does she do it too?
Do what to?
Does she have affairs too?
Teddy, you're my friend, and I love you. You're a sweet, sensitive guy, but you're very naive. To think that my Saint Teresa would fool around?
I
Could
just
you
asked
imagine
the
this?
question.
Do you believe this man asking whether my Teresa would fool around?
I find it hard to imagine your wife is sleeping with you.
Teddy, what am I laughing at?
We learn that Joe, he has been thrown out by his wife and she's taken the kids or something like that, and he's kind of at his wit's end, and he doesn't know what to do with himself and all that kind of stuff. And after we finish hanging out with these guys, don't we shift back to Dee Dee in the house? Isn't Teddy telling Dee Dee about Joe and how Dee Dee kind of reveals to Teddy that Joe had what, you know, he deserved to kind of be kicked out. If you secretly speaking, Teddy, I'm actually a very jealous woman, and saying all that kind of stuff. Is that right?
That's pretty much it. Like, he's continuing with the charade of, you know, any reason to get out of the house that night. It turns out that she had organized him to actually take their daughter to the movies, because he was saying, like, he wanted to go to the movies even though it was a book club. So the daughter comes to him and says, "Oh, I hope you're not upset, but I can't go to the movies tonight because I'm going out with Shelley." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." Turns around and finds out that Shelley is this like weird, quiet punk dude.
And he's really weird.
He just kind of like repeats what Gene Wilder says to him, like, "How are you doing? How are you doing?" "I'm fine." It's weird.
Yeah, I couldn't quite work him. And he has another scene towards the end of the film that's even stranger.
Oh, we'll get to that.
He's kind of, to be truthful, like he's kind of meant to be comic relief, I think, but he doesn't quite nail it. He just comes across as like really, really like strange. Like he's a punk guy, he's a punk rocker, but yeah, just a very odd character, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's that thing of like, you get the feeling like he would be very uncomfortable with his daughter going out with this guy, but at the same time, he really wants to go on this date with the woman. So it's like, you know, this is like the tests that he has to go through. He has to be tested about how much he actually wants to go and have this affair.
Meanwhile, we have all of Wilder's friends. I think we shift back to like a bar of some description, and it turns out that they kind of dare each other to do this gag called the blind man. And I actually thought this was actually quite a funny gag. It actually made me laugh whilst I was watching it. The premise is they go into a bar and one of them pretends to be blind and they just cause chaos. Total A-grade chaos. And so you got Charles Grodin blind, and the bartender keeps like giving him drinks or trying to like serve up a drink, and he keeps like moving his hand really swiftly across the bar and like smashing the thing and sort of getting like irate with the bartender. But I actually quite enjoyed all that.
I did too. I mean, the scene comes out of nowhere.
It doesn't really add anything to
I guess it just sets up like how friendly all these guys are. Like they're very immature men who cheat on their wives and then dare each other to do stupid pranks like pretend to be blind and go and smash up a restaurant and see how far, you know, they can take it. How much can they get away with? But yeah, the whole scene, as funny as it is, just comes out of nowhere for no reason. But I love the ending of it. Is that they pull him out of the restaurant and say, "Oh, we're so sorry." And then he gets behind the wheel of the car and drives off. And he's like waving his hands, like hovering his hands over the steering wheel. Like
oh my God.
Like they car's just driving itself now.
So we kind of have Teddy desperately trying to meet up with Charlotte, but for whatever reason, he doesn't see her that night.
Well, he's got Joe's kid.
That's right.
Yeah, Joe's wife, who had left him, taken all the furniture and the kids, has dropped off one of the kids with them to look after. It's actually kind of, again, a weird scene. The kid is sitting there with no pants on for no reason.
Yeah.
While they're talking about, like, how they have to get him to bed and stuff like that, and he might have to go to work or something. I'm like, why does this kid have no pants on in this scene for, like, no reason at all?
Yeah, I was a bit confused. So, yeah, right, he misses out on any chance of a date, even though he had inadvertently was meant to hook up with Miss Milner, who was the Gilda Radner character. And we actually get a forlorn shot of Gilda sitting in the restaurant by herself with, like, several drinks in front of her or something like that. And you could clearly see that she's not very happy.
And this is when he finds the gun as well.
Yeah, that's
he learns
right.
that his wife has got a gun for protection for any reason. They're talking about Joe and, like, how he's an absolute pig and he should never have done that to his wife. Dee Dee's talking about, like, if that ever happened to us, I don't know what I would do. So he really loses his nerve. And one of his mates calls up as they planned to make it appear like he's being called back to the office. And he does his natural Gene Wilder bit where he's like, you tell my superiors that even though they can give me a promotion and a raise, they can take it and shove it up their ass. And then just, like, hangs up on him. It's just classic Gene Wilder, doing what Gene Wilder does. That was so funny.
He's always great when he starts yelling, I think. Not that I should compare him, but Adam Sandler, I'm sorry to bring this up, but I've always enjoyed Adam Sandler when he yells. I think he's very funny when he's just got this tone about it, this pitch that he kind of hits. When he kind of yells, it's actually quite funny. And Gene Wilder's a little similar, like when he's got this great pitch that he kind of gets to, and he's quite angry and he gets really aggressive, but he's very funny.
And this is where it really starts to go downhill for Teddy.
Yeah.
Because even though he hasn't done anything, he never got out on that date.
But he keeps thinking about it, doesn't he?
But, you know, as soon as he goes to work the next morning, who's waiting there but Gilda Radner, all forlorn and, you know, jilted lover
Very
comes
cranky.
up and just, like, bends up his car aerial there and...
Yep.
He's gonna start feeling the repercussions of what he's been up to.
Doesn't she, like, key his car and that too, or something like that? Yeah.
She's been jilted.
But it turns out that Kelly LeBrock is actually back at the ad agency and they're able to kind of get reacquainted, aren't they?
He learns that they have signed this woman as a model to their ad agency, and his assistant guy, who's one of his friends, happens to mention that she likes to horse ride out in Golden Gate Park, I think it was.
Yes.
So he goes and rents a horse.
He stalks her.
Stalks her, pretty much, yeah. I think in voiceover, he says that he spends a good, like, week or 2 weeks riding horses around Golden Gate Park before he actually runs into her.
Oh my God, I actually didn't pick that up at all. So he's really spent like 2 weeks of his life desperately trying to track this woman down.
He even gets a phone call at one point from Gilda Radner, who's still seething about things. Since they're on the phone, she says, you know, I'm very upset about the other night. He immediately thinks that it's her on the phone again, the woman in red, and wants to set up another date with her. So Gilda Radner's like, oh, okay, maybe I will forgive you. But she's still very forceful. She's like, fine, 5 o'clock. If you want to do this again, I'll give you this last chance, which again doesn't work out.
Keeps kind of making lots and lots of excuses and these terrible ruses to try and convince his family that he's like on the straight and narrow, and he's like, you know, work is always kind of calling him away, and he's taking every opportunity to try and see Kelly LeBrock, even though, keep in mind, during all this, they haven't actually done anything yet. Not to my understanding anyway. I mean, we kind of get to that a little later in the film, but for most of it, they're just friends, aren't they? They're just kind of hanging out or whatever it might be, or trying to connect. I kind of get that impression that they're not even really seeing each other. They're just trying to see each other. Is that kind of right?
Pretty much. That's the whole thing, is that he's just been trying to have an affair. So yeah, all this bad stuff's happened to him, and it's really just about how much will he go through in order to have this affair. Yeah, it's a bit different.
Meanwhile, Joe's wife takes him back, and that scenario's all sorted out. It even comes to light, and there's actually a really interesting sequence where it's actually revealed that Charles Grodin's character, Buddy, is in fact gay and has been seeing another man, because there's this sequence at a restaurant where they meet up and they're having drinks or whatever reason, and this random man shows up and just stares at Charles Grodin from across the road, comes over and taps him on the shoulder, says something to him, runs back to the car and throws what's clearly like his clothes and his possessions like on the ground or something like that, and then it kind of gets revealed that he's actually gay.
It's after Joe's wife takes him back, and they kind of have like a party to celebrate their reconnection or whatever. Charles Grodin meets a guy there named Eric, because he's got his name on like a bracelet or something. So later when they're at the restaurant, the guy comes in, drops this bracelet down, calls him a sorry bitch, and throws his clothes out of the car. I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's about, because like we know that Joe was cheating on his wife, and then you've got this gay character who's also cheating on his lover, and they have this scene between Gene Wilder and Grodin where they're in the apartment, and he kind of like, he seems like he's really screwed up. You know, he's cheated on someone who he genuinely was in love with. The two of them were living together, even though he says like, you know, I've been living with my friend. You know, it's still the mid-'80s, so it's kind of, you know, he can't say boyfriend or come out like that.
Yeah, he's just not comfortable enough, is he?
But Gene sort of gets up.
He makes a joke.
Yeah, he tells a joke, and the two of them hug it out, as if to say, like, I know what you're trying to tell me. I know that you're gay. I know that you weren't just living with a friend, quote unquote. Yeah. But you and I, we're friends. You know, and we can still be buds and we can still have a joke. You know, it was just that unspoken, we're buds and I don't care what your sexuality is.
And then you get this really odd scene not long after that where once again Gene Wilder makes another, you know, elaborate ruse to, you know, I think he had to go somewhere, or I can't recall exactly what happened, but he actually does go out on a date with Kelly LeBrock, but on their way to the date, he insists on stopping in at his like aunt's house or something like that, because it's her birthday or something's happened, and he insists on stopping in just for like a glass of wine. 5 minutes we'll be there for. 5 minutes, he says.
Why, hello.
Hello yourself.
What a pleasant surprise.
Well, not really. I just came to give you back your earring.
What earring?
I don't know whose it is. It fell out of your pocket yesterday. When you got off your horse, I decided to pick it up after you left so quickly.
Well, it's a nice earring, but it's not mine. What would I be doing with an earring? So what's new?
I'm going to be late for my dance class.
No, wait. How about having dinner with me?
Thank you, Vinod.
I know this funny little place. It's a fun little Chinese place where you sit down on the floor and you can eat with your hands or chopsticks or anything you want. For lunch?
No, I'm not free for lunch or dinner.
A little snack in between?
I'd better be going. What's your name?
Theodore Pierce. Teddy. Ted.
Tomorrow, 6 o'clock, Tulio's.
On Columbus?
Yeah. How old's that suit?
This? I don't know. 6, 7, 8 years, maybe.
It looks it.
Wait! What's your name?
Charlotte!
Charles Grodin, luckily, sort of tags along because earlier Gilda Radner had wrecked his car.
Yeah.
Because he goes and he meets her thinking he's going to meet who we now know her name is Charlotte. But he thinks he's meeting up with her again because of the phone call. Sees Gilda Radner there, immediately runs away from her. So again, she's feeling jilted. And she takes the handbrake off his car and trashes it. So he's going out on this date. Buddy's there pretending to be a chauffeur or whatever. So when he goes in and there's a surprise party for him and the whole family's there, then his mate can jump in and pretend that this is actually his girlfriend, you know? Whenever.
I love Gene Wilder's like reaction during that surprise party, like the stuff that he says, like, "What are you doing to me? You're killing me," and all this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, it's like he was a seasoned liar at this or something.
He's running around giving kisses to everyone. Meanwhile, Kelly LeBrock is standing there, essentially just staring at Gene Wilder's wife, and Dee Dee's kind of looking back as well, very suspiciously, just kind of going, "Who are you and why are you with my husband?"
Exactly, and Kelly LeBrock knows what's going on.
And Gene Wilder's kind of standing there, and he eventually gets around to kind of introducing Dee Dee to her. And at the 11th hour, and it's all very awkward, and you can tell it's going to go pear-shaped, Charles Grodin barges in and basically says, "There you are," and, you know, runs around and gives everyone kisses, and they keep trying to, like, get him to stay, and he's like, "No, I can't stay. I absolutely have to leave. You know, this is family only. I'm not family. I can't possibly stay. You just have to celebrate by yourself. It's okay." And introduces Kelly LeBrock, Charlotte, as his date, and kind of saves Gene Wilder's ass big time, yeah?
Yeah, it's all just a very crazy sequence of events, too, because during this time, too, we also find that Dee Dee's having an affair with her daughter's boyfriend, Shelley.
Is that actually happening? I wasn't sure if that was like a thing or not, or if Shelley was just being super weird.
No, I think she was actually having an affair with him.
Because he propositions her, doesn't he? Like, while she's on the phone to Gene. She does get a bit irritated, but you can kind of almost tell it's like, this has happened before, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, because, you know, he comes in and he puts a hand
on her
boob there, and she's like, you know, push it away. But, you know, if this was like something that really was unwanted, she would have smacked him or screamed or something. She was into it. She just wasn't into it right now.
Yeah, oh, it's interesting. I was curious of what your interpretation of that was, because, I mean, I found the whole thing perplexing. Shelley was an odd character to begin with, so to think that he might be having an affair with Dee Dee was strange to me, but, you know, that's okay. It is what it is.
There was also a whole thing about him going to meet Charlotte in LA, I think it was. They'd organized a time to meet. They'd organized a date. She couldn't make it, but she says, "I'm in LA if you want to come." So he, you know, manages to talk his way out on, you know, going on a business trip or something.
Is that scene when he's in the bar?
Yeah, and he starts losing his shit in that Gene Wilder way.
Yeah, losing his shit, like getting really angry about, like, "I can't believe they can expect this from me. And
I will not leave my wife and children."
What does he say? He said, "I'm going to say no." And I think Dee Dee sort of says, "How can you say no?" And he says, "Very easily." No.
And then, yeah, like he's flying there, but then it gets diverted to San Diego. Yeah, so he doesn't make it there anyway.
And also keep in mind, too, when they're leaving the aunt's place downstairs, his mates had staged another elaborate ruse where he comes out of the apartment from the aunt's place with Dee Dee and their daughter. 2 daughters, might add, I think it is. He comes out and Charles Grodin runs over and says, "Teddy, you've got to help me. Something's happened with Joe. Like his wife's left him again and he's in a bit of a state."
This is crazy. Because he goes like, "Oh, I think Joe's going to kill himself." And then they run over and he's actually screaming about killing her. It's just let me go. Just let me go and kill her. I'm going to go and do it. I'm just going to kill her. And I'm like, whoa.
I know.
Far out. And this is all just a ruse because it's his birthday and they wanted to drag him away.
When I was watching it, I thought, man, this is pretty convincing. You know what I mean? Like him kind of losing his shit a little bit about his ex-wife. And meanwhile, like he's like throwing punches and trying to do all this kind of stuff. And Dee Dee is on the other side of the road and she's actually yelling out, "Should I go home?" to Teddy. And Teddy's like, yeah. Just go home. Go home.
Get the girls out of here. They don't need to see this.
Yes, exactly.
And it's all just so they can drag him away, because even after that awkward thing with Charlotte and his wife there, she's like even more into him now.
Totally up for it.
So they drop him off. She's doing like a night photo shoot, looking stunning, and he kind of hangs out with her all night during this photo shoot and all these various outfits that she has to wear. And they go back to her hotel room and she like freaking begs him, to do her. It's ridiculous.
Just going back to the scene where Joe's losing his shit and he gets into the car and he doesn't believe it's a ruse. I love that scene where he realizes it's a ruse and he just yells out, "You assholes! You assholes! I can't believe you're assholes!" It just made me laugh. Anyway, they go back to his hotel room and she's totally begging for Gene to kind of do it. And it's really awkward, isn't it? They undress. He's like, "Where should we do it? Should we go to the bed or should we, there's a chair over there, maybe we can do it in the chair." Or something like that. And she strips down to her undies, looking mighty fine, might I add.
Oh, did you get an eyeful of that side boob? Kelly LeBrock side boob, ladies and gentlemen. If there's no other reason to watch this movie, it's for that.
Gene Wilder is in bed, a water bed, might I add.
So 80s.
And he's terribly uncomfortable, like terribly uncomfortable. And you can just tell that it almost starts to happen. And then out of nowhere, the phone rings.
Oh, well, the first thing, because he gets under the sheets, takes his underwear off,
that's right,
flings it, and she's like, "Oh, it landed on the lamp. We don't want to start a fire. Can you go and dust it?" So, like, he's being cock-blocked already.
He gets the undies, jumps back into bed. He's about to get down to business, and the phone rings. Kelly LeBrock answers it, and it's some random guy downstairs saying, "Hi, honey, I'm here. Like, I'm coming upstairs. I'll be there in 5 minutes," or whatever it is. And Kelly LeBrock jumps up, tells Gene Wilder that was my husband, and he's going to be here in 5 minutes, and you have to leave now. And Gene Wilder is like, "I can face him like a man," and she's like, "No, he will kill you. He will not accept this. You need to leave now." So she quickly gets like his clothes and essentially forces him out the window.
Yeah, and they're on like the third, fourth floor of the hotel.
Oh, it feels a bit higher than that, actually. It looked like maybe 8th or 9th or something like that.
Maybe.
It was up quite high, but he was outside, and I can't remember if he had pants on. I think he did have pants on, but did he have his shirt on, or was he shirtless during it?
He didn't want to put his clothes on because he was just like, well, I'm just going to face this guy and whatever. And he puts a robe on, so he at least has a robe on.
In hindsight, he probably would have been better if he did face the guy, because what happened is he goes out to the ledge, somebody from the ground sees him and assumes that he's like a jumper. So a crowd gathers and the press show up, and there are cameras pointed at Teddy, and he's being streamed live to the news, saying that there's a jumper at a hotel. He's about to jump, and showing him live and all that kind of stuff. And we actually flick back to Dee Dee, who's watching TV with her daughter at the time, and sees Teddy up there, and it's quite shocking, isn't it?
Well, she has a weird reaction because the kids are like, "Hey, Mom, doesn't that look like Dad on there?" And Dee Dee looks at it, and she sort of starts like laughing, like as if like he's some sort of crazy fool. Like, "Oh, what's this crazy fool done now?" It's not like, you know, he's at a hotel in a bathrobe out on the ledge and I'm worried, or I think he's having an affair. She laughs at it.
She does laugh at it, and it's a bit of a strange reaction considering she's supposedly this jealous kind of, wife who would go to any lengths to kind of protect her man. But as you said, I mean, you alluded to the fact that maybe she was cheating as well with her daughter's friend Shelley. So it's possible that maybe she was slightly detached from the whole situation.
And even the end of it, like he's out there on the ledge and he's thinking about his life, and he just thinks, "What am I doing?" Yeah,
oh, that's right.
Ridiculous.
They put up the fire ladder and then they pull it down really quickly, so to say, no, we've done that before, and when we put it up there, they jump.
Yeah, so they've got like the trampoline thing. He decides he's going to jump for the trampoline.
He won't go back through to... that's right. Doesn't he go back to the window? And aren't they having sex? The husband and Kelly LeBrock? Like, as opposed to, like, getting the man that's on the ledge, like, outside. They decide to have sex, but that's okay. The only option for Teddy in this situation is to jump onto the fire mat so he can get down from the ledge and actually escape this terrible situation that he's in. And he jumps down, and there's this weird sequence that goes on for about at least a minute.
It's like a green screen of him falling down.
He keeps like thinking, geez, what was I thinking? I've got a great wife. Why would I do this? Like, what a terrible decision I've made, and I'll never do this again. And I can't wait to see my wife and doing all this kind of stuff. And as he's going down, he notices a
reporter,
photographer, like a reporter who's there covering the event, and he starts like checking her out, and she's like cute and
look at those legs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look at those legs, and starts the whole cycle all over again. So it kind of shows that he hasn't really learned, has he?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Teddy, I'm really sorry. I know it's your birthday. I hate to come running in the middle of your celebration and everything. He slipped out. I think he's gonna kill himself.
Who? I don't know who you're talking about.
Joey, I don't know. She left him. I don't know why. Just bam, she walked out. I don't know what happened. Then across the street in the car. Maybe it's. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But we don't know. Teddy's like the voice of reason.
But it's terrible.
I'm terrible with this kind of stuff.
Oh, Michael.
Joey, I'm right here. Will you talk to me?
Teddy, so I gotta kill her.
Joey, calm down.
Leave me alone so I can kill her. Oh, I gotta kill her. I gotta kill her.
Come here.
I gotta kill her.
Calm down. Just calm down.
Let me kill her.
Calm down.
Kill her.
Joey, it'll be all right.
Take it easy, you son of a bastard. Take it easy. Easy.
I'm done.
Calm down.
I'm finished.
Teddy, should I go home? What?
Yes, go home. It's okay.
Do you have a key?
Yes. Get the kids out of here.
Come
All
on.
right, girls, come on. I'll be there in a minute.
Girls are done with. She took my kids again, Teddy.
It'll be all right, Joey.
Why did she take my kids
I don't know.
again?
It'll be all right tomorrow. Get in the car. Buddy, get in the driver's seat.
My
Come on,
kids.
Joey.
Shut up there, man.
Up yours, you have no heart on. Let me get that
No,
back
get
ahead.
on. Joey, I know you're in a lot of pain, but I want to tell you something.
No, Teddy. I want to tell you something.
Happy birthday to you. No. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Teddy. Happy birthday.
You're babies. You're little babies. You're the biggest assholes I've ever seen in my life.
It's not at all what I thought it would be at the end of the day. Like, I know I'd seen this movie before. I couldn't really remember it. And after watching it, I was like, seriously? This movie was just about, cheating couples and stuff like that. And there's really no major revelations to the story at all.
It would be interesting to see the original French production, that Pardon Mon Affaire, just to kind of compare notes a little bit to see if the original comes off slightly better. Because just from my perspective, from a ratings recommend point of view, I do like this film, but I don't love it. If I had to give it a rating, I think I'm kind of hovering around the 5.5 to 6 teddies out of 10. I think I'm kind of at that level. There's a couple of nice moments, and as far as a Wilder performance, it's pretty genuine, and I quite like watching Gene Wilder in pretty much anything. I think he's a great actor and a wonderful comedian, and I don't know if he's firing on all cylinders in this film, and I suspect with maybe a couple of changes and maybe a little bit more believability in the script itself and the story, the way the story's told, I maybe probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Maybe if the film was slightly more serious, because essentially the film's about adultery and actually the concept of cheating on your wife and what to do if you have that itch that you have to scratch and want adventure in your life and all that kind of stuff. And the film doesn't really tackle that as well as it could. It's like a farce, a comedy farce almost. And I mean, it's nice. Kelly LeBrock is okay in it. Charles Grodin's okay in it. They're all okay. Gilda Radner, they're fine. But as far as I wouldn't call this film a home run for me personally. Watch it if you're a Gene Wilder completist, but if you never saw it, I don't think you'd be missing out all that much.
I think I'm probably around, say, 7 side boobs. It's a decent film. But I just think a lot of sequences are drawn out. The first time he sees Charlotte, and then it takes a really long time for it to come back round to that, and it cuts to all this stuff of him accidentally asking out Gilda Radner and all this, and that happens 2-3 times before he ever tracks Charlotte down again and manages to set up a date with her. And then the whole thing about trying to get to Los Angeles and things like that, it all just seems so drawn out. I enjoyed Gene Wilder. I really enjoyed Kelly LeBrock, and the friendship that he has with his mates, Joe and Buddy and all that. I thought it was really good. It just could have been tightened up a bit more, and maybe some of the side characters could have been a bit more fleshed out.
I think the direction could have been slightly more relaxed as well. The whole film didn't feel very relaxed. It was like it was trying to force this kind of issue. Like, as we mentioned before, like the way you meet Kelly LeBrock's character is so like, it's quite strange, truthfully. The whole walking along and standing and having, like, she dances there for at least 60 to 90 seconds. It's really quite weird.
Relaxed is a good way to put it. You know, this is a comedy at the end of the day, and it's almost like it's trying to be too serious for a comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a 7 is pretty good. I still enjoy it, and I still enjoy the performances.
Did you stick around for the outtakes during the credits?
I did. I usually stick around for outtakes and stuff.
Did you see Gene Wilder dancing with Kelly LeBrock?
Yeah.
Right at the front of the... That made me laugh because it was so quintessentially 80s, that sequence. Because there's like Gene Wilder in this like grey kind of tracksuit or whatever it is, whatever he's kind of in, and it just looks really 80s. But anyway, it just made me giggle.
But yeah, not a bad way to round out these bonus episodes here. But yeah, I still enjoyed it.
Definitely. So that's it for our Gene Wilder discussion. I've personally had a great time going back through his films. It's actually really made me, rediscover him as an actor and a comedian. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching these films again eventually too. So I'll certainly, I might even go further back into it just privately. I've never seen like Hanky Panky, or I've seen Young Frankenstein, but I've never seen that Sherlock Holmes one or some of those as well. Like there's probably more for me to watch. I'm sure you're the same too, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to go back and maybe check out a few more, without a doubt. All right, so I guess just to remind everybody, if you want to join us for the next set we're doing, we're going to get into the 12 installments of Friday the 13th. And Nathan, you're new to this.
I am new to this, but I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea what to expect.
So we'll be doing episodes for all 12 installments, so that's Friday the 13th, parts 1, 2, 3, part 4, the final chapter, part 5, A New Beginning, then Jason Lives, part 6, part 7, The New Blood, part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, then Jason Goes to Hell, again, Final Friday.
Final?
Still not the end.
What's with this final business?
People just wanted to keep ending this franchise, but it kept going, because after that was Jason X, then Freddy versus Jason. We're getting a little Freddy Krueger crossover, and then wrapping it up with the remake Friday the 13th from 2009.
Nice. So that's it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by joining our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast, and follow the show on Twitter at RewatchPod, and visit our webpage, rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. That's always helpful. And you can help support the show by heading over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast and make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And of course, our entire back catalogue is on YouTube, so search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. All right, Nathan, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks, Corey.
We covered 6 films here. 6, for the most part, I think pretty decent films. You gave a couple of not recommends there, but yeah, it was really good. But I think all in all, there was no scathing,
oh no, definitely
harsh not recommends in this. So I think that's a pretty decent set of 6 we've covered here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I look forward to Friday the 13th.
Yes, and that just leaves me to say, until next time, you sorry bitch.
Crazy as it seems, I actually had adventure in my life.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended.
I learned my lesson, and I will never do it again.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Oh, is that all? I thought we did something wrong.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
I'm not a wind-up toy.
Copyright 2017, The Rewatch Podcast.
I'm going to throw a party tonight back at the hotel in New York. And you're all invited.
Hi, Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Cory.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Cory. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone.